Okay, so Ezekiel, kind of crazy guy. If we had Ezekiel in most environments today, I think we'd be calling mental health services rather than listening to him. And I'm pretty sure that that's what happened when he went and said to people, you're a rebellious house and God says you're rebellious. But in a time then, people were a little bit more accepting of people hearing the voice of God than we are today. And the assumption that when someone said, oh, I heard a voice, was not, there's something wrong. And Ezekiel is what you would traditionally recognize as a prophet. He saw visions, lots of them. An awful lot of them were about how rebellious the people of Israel were and how they needed to buck up and behave themselves better. He's also, the man of the dry bones of the desert. He gets an entire book in the Bible dedicated to this. And if you actually read it from start to finish, it doesn't entirely make sense because it was edited quite heavily. But if we start at the beginning, which pretty much this is, we hear a guy who's really not paying that much attention because this is the beginning of him hearing these visions. And he hears God saying to him, man, stand up on your feet and I will speak to you. And the curious thing is, he doesn't stand up and hear. Something stands him up and then he listens. Which tells me that he wasn't paying that great attention the first time round. Because, if I heard the voice of God and was sure it was God and it said stand up, I think I would stand up. But Ezekiel didn't. So God decided, okay, I'll stand you up so that you listen. And then he says, I'm sending you to the people of Israel because they've not been listening to me. So basically, lots of people aren't listening to God, so we decided to shout in the ear of one man and send this poor one man off to tell the Israelites that they're not listening properly, they've been rebellious, and they're not paying attention. And I don't know how many times this passage says rebellious house in it, but it was quite often, wasn't it, Jonathan? So you can't really miss it. This is really Ezekiel's message that he's receiving. And I think, unfortunately, that we're quite rebellious today. And I'm not a great one for believing that I need to punish myself or self-flagellate because I'm not doing it great. But I think as a people of the world, we are rebellious. I don't think we listen to what's best for us. I don't think we stand up for what's right. I certainly think that some of the people leading our countries at the moment are not standing up for what's best. They're standing up for themselves. And that's really what this is talking about. And that's why God made Ezekiel stand up and said, I don't care what you were thinking about Ezekiel yesterday. Doesn't matter. Today, you're going to go and tell someone else that they're not listening. Open your mouth and eat what I give you. The ultimate trust, demanding that trust of Ezekiel, God says, trust me. And then gave him a scroll of lamentation, mourning and woe. Oh, what a good day he was having. It's not even like it was, here's some good news messages for you to have. No. And the rest of this book tells the story of lamentation, mourning and woe that the Israelites need to hear because they've been so rebellious, they need to be scorned heavily. I really feel sorry for Ezekiel because, he must have had a really tough time because nobody wants to hear that they're rebellious. I had... Yesterday we gathered as a family for my mother's birthday, and my nieces were being informed that they had not been terribly good at bedtime for the last few nights. And I said, but when I stayed, you were really good. She said, and the littlest one, who's 5, said, well, yes, because we didn't want to show you how naughty we can be. And I had to laugh because, She doesn't understand the irony yet. So she didn't understand when I said, so what you're saying is that it's okay for you to be naughty for Mummy and for Granny, but it's not okay to be naughty for Auntie SJ. So do you love Auntie SJ more than you love Mummy and Granny? And she said, no, it's okay. I stopped digging that hole. And she's like, what? I don't understand. Because at that point I'd gone into metaphors and she didn't understand. But she didn't want to be told that she should be better. But she knows, clearly she knows, that she can be better. Sometimes I think we need to listen to the voice of God with the ears of a 5-year-old and admit that sometimes we're naughty even when we know we should do better, and most of the time we try quite hard to do what's right. We're not rebellious teenagers, and we have one who's almost becoming a rebellious teenager. She hasn't really worked out how to rebel yet, but makeup has made an appearance at times when it's not supposed to, so she's learning. Rebellion is all about asserting yourself. When teenagers rebel, it's because they're trying to figure out who they are, separate to the person that their parents have tried to make them. It's rarely because there's something unreasonable that's been asked of them, although they will tell you that. And it's rarely because they fundamentally disagree with the house rules. But they want to stay out a little bit later because they want to do their own thing, because they really don't want to be told what to do by Mum and Dad anymore, and they think they know it all. And that's pretty much what the Israelites were about. They thought they knew it all. They didn't really need God. And if you heard me when we were preaching on Judges, unfortunately I seem to get weeks and weeks in a row where the Israelites had been naughty, had turned away from God and come back and said, please rescue us. So clearly by the time we get to the prophets, God has given up on them coming round and saying, please rescue us, and has decided to send someone out to rescue them. But instead, because they haven't come to him and said, we're really sorry, they have to get the lecture first. Well, I don't know about you, but I remember being the teenager that had to get the lecture before I said sorry, after having been the child who said sorry first. And I'm pretty sure that my nieces get the lecture before they say sorry sometimes about bedtime. In our relationship with God, I sometimes wonder if I'm waiting for the lecture before I'm ready to say sorry. And who is going to come and give me that? Because we live in a world where nothing is wrong unless it's against the criminal laws of the country, and that's a little bit different. Where we have to be pushed to apologise, because apology is seen as a sign of weakness. Far too often in my place of employment, people will bluster and try and get out of an apology, when actually a simple, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, would go a long way. I hope we don't get sent another Ezekiel, sent to spend an entire lifetime telling us how wrong we are, because I'm not sure we'd listen. I look at politicians and I see that they don't listen when others are saying you're wrong. I see newspaper headlines, I see people campaigning, and it's all ignored. Our voices cannot be silenced. But are we going to be the Ezekiel trying to change the world? Listening to what God is saying, being stood on our feet and standing in the strength that comes from God to lead the way into the right, which is where Ezekiel eventually gets to. After many, many lamentations, mournings and woe, and many tellings of rebellion, he does get to the God loves you and here's what you're going to do next bit eventually. We need to get to that point. We know that God loves us unconditionally. And like my nieces, we know that we can go to bed nicely for Auntie SJ, because showing Auntie SJ that they can be good is important. But sometimes we need to remember that it's not the 1 or 2 nights a year that Auntie SJ babysits that count. It's the other 354 where Mummy's in charge that make the difference to our lives. I know that we always mean to do our best. I know that God loves us no matter what, just like my sister loves her children, no matter how naughty they are. Because there's no malice in them being a bit of a pain when it comes to going to bed, or when they don't do their homework. They're just trying to find the edges of the boundaries and trying to say, I don't want to do that right now. Sometimes the hardest thing we have to do is follow where God is telling us to go. And sometimes we have to do it anyway. Sometimes we have to follow God's exhortation to Ezekiel. Do not be afraid of them. Do not be afraid of their words. Though briars and thorns surround you, and you live among scorpions, do not be afraid of their words, and do not be dismayed at their looks. Sometimes we have to remember that the spiky things that happen to us, the things that hurt us, the words, the looks, they're not things to be afraid of. They're things that tell us that we are telling an unpopular truth, but it's one that needs to be heard. Amen.